You're going to lie down. You're going to lie down in what we call neutral spine, which means the back of the head, so the solid part of the skull, down on the mat. Then you're going to take, and I always like to use my elbows, lift my shoulder blades towards the center of the spine and then drop back down on those shoulder blades. So that's the next thing you're going to feel down on the mat. Then the last thing you're going to feel on the mat in neutral spine is your tailbone. So what you are lacking is that lower back being on the mat and your cervical spine or the back of your neck being down. Those are the two natural curves of the spine, and those are meant for movement, to allow for certain movements. So you want to stay in that neutral position, and that would be the contact points on the mat. Back of the head, shoulder blades, and tailbone. Now in the front, you want to have the hip bones straight across one another and the pubic bone level with that. So you're not in a pelvic tilt, you're in a neutral pelvis. So those three bones are going to be in a neutral line. Now, from there, you have your heels right out from your sits bones when your knees are bent. And now all I want you to do is make your right leg as light as a feather and just slide that on down, stay in neutral spine, and bring it back on up. And then you're going to go to the left leg, make it light as a feather, slide it down so it's just brushing it, and then slide it back on up. And you're going to try to challenge the core to stay in neutral. Now with one leg at a time, it should be doable to lengthen that leg and then bend. So I'm bending at the hip, the knee, and the ankle. And then I'm going to slide the left leg on out, and you're going to bring it back in, bending at those lower leg joints. Now, what I'd like to do here is you're going to go ahead and lift the right leg to a tabletop, and then you're going to lift your left leg to a tabletop, staying in neutral spine so the lower back does not go down to the mat. And then you're going to lower the right leg and then lower the left leg. Now we'll start with bringing the left leg up to a tabletop and then the right leg up to a tabletop, and then bring the left leg down and bring the right leg down. Now if that pulls on your lower back, you know that your lower back is then tight. So the hip flexors are influencing that. So keep that pelvis in neutral and try the right again, and then the left, and then bring the right, and then bring the left down. All right, so we're trying to keep that lower back in neutral. Now, when I say an imprint, or we're going to go out of neutral, and you're going to pull the navel down to the mat, causing the pelvis to tip up towards the ceiling. So now I have no space between the mat and my lower back, and I have a tipped pelvis. And then I'm going to go back to neutral. So I need to see the difference between the two. So you're going to pull the navel down, go into your pelvic tilt or scoop, and then you're going to go back to neutral, back to that straight line arrangement. In the front, the alignment will be from the sternum down to the pubic bone. I could put a yardstick across those two bones, and it would be level. And go ahead and give me another pelvic tilt, and go back to neutral. And one more time, pull that navel down. So when you pull the navel down, you're working the transversus muscle, which causes compression in the abdominal cavity. And then you're going to go all the way back to neutral. So now we're going to progress this on. So I'm going to go ahead, go to a pelvic tilt, and now you will feel when I lift my right leg on up and the left leg on up that you have to hold that lower back on. That lower back has to stay glued to that mat. Then bring the right leg down and then the left leg down. And then go to left leg going on up and then right leg going on up and left leg down, right leg down. So you can feel the difference between the two. Right leg on up, left leg on up, right leg down, left leg down. Last time, keep that imprint, keep that navel pulled down. Left leg up, right leg up, left leg down, right leg down. Almost confused you there. Now with that imprint, I want you to stay with that imprint. You're going to lift your right leg on up and then the left leg on up. Now we're going to add the arms behind the head. So you're going to interlace your fingers, put it underneath the head and open up the elbows so the outside of the elbows are down on the floor, and you've got to keep your rib cage laced together. So you're in this tabletop, and now from here I'm going to round my head on up to look at my knees. My shoulder blades are still down, and then bring it back down. So that's just the cervical spine. So I bring my head on up to look at my knees and bring it back down. Now I'm going to go ahead and lift my shoulder blades all the way up, and I can feel that I'm starting to work the end of the rectus as it attaches across the front of the rib cage, and then bring that back down. So round the head on up, then lift the shoulder blades off. So when you lift the shoulder blades off and you start to round that chest, then you're challenging the end of the rectus as it attaches to the sternum and the front ribs. Now we're going to just touch down to the shoulder blades. My head doesn't go all the way down, and then lift it back on up. Touch down, lift on up. And we're going to do 6 more of those, 5 more of those. Breathe out every time you come on up. 3, 2, and 1. And you can come down. Can you feel that across your front ribs? Excellent. That's what we want to do. Now I'm going to have you put those elbows back down. You're going to stay in this imprint, and I'm going to have you move the knee away, and then bring it back in, and then the knee away. Keep that imprint. Now you're going to do both. So if the one was hard, stay with the one. If that was not hard and you could keep your imprint, then I want you to try with 2. Keeping the imprint so your back is not moving out of that imprint. And do 4 more, 3 more, 2 more, and now you're starting to feel the lower abdominal rectus, and then you're going to now bring the head towards the knees. So I have both ends now curled on up, and then I'm going to go ahead and stay up in this curled position and rotate towards the outside of the knee, and then rotate to the other side, and breathe out every time you do that. So I'm moving the rib cage, I'm not pulling on the head, and you should feel this in your obliques, along the rib cage, down to the hip bone. Breathe out every time you do that. Keep on going. 4 more, 3 more, 2 more, 1 more, and you're there. All right. Can you feel that in your abs? Excellent. Put your feet down right out from your sits bones. You're going to go ahead and put those arms long on the mat, and we're going to go ahead into our shoulder bridge. So I'm going to start in neutral. So go out of that imprint, back to neutral. So tailbone, shoulder blades, back of the head. Arms are long on the mat. Take a breath in. Go through your pelvic tilt as you breathe on up and peel off the floor 1 vertebrae at a time until you're all the way on up to your bottom of your shoulder blade only. And then go ahead, take another breath in and roll it back down. All the way back to your neutral. Don't stay up in that pelvic tilt. And then go ahead and do that again. Breathe in to prepare. Breathe out and bridge on up. So you're going to bridge on up in one long exhalation. You should be straight across the front of the hips. Your knees should be running parallel like a train tracks. Your toes should be down. And you should feel that your glutes are doing the heavy lifting of holding that pelvis up in mid-air. And then go ahead and roll it back down, starting way up at the shoulder blades, bottom of the shoulder blades, roll down. You go through your imprint all the way back to neutral. Going to do that a couple more times. Breathe in, breathe out, and roll it on up. So I really want you to get a sense of keeping those legs running in parallel, and that it is the glute that helps you organize the spine. And then you're going to breathe out as you roll back down. One vertebrae at a time. You're trying to separate between each of those small bones of the spine. And you go all the way back to neutral. Now this time I'm going to bridge on up, and I'm going to add to it as we hold up in a bridge. So breathe out, bridge on up. Hold that line. Feel those glutes are engaged. All right, now from here, I'm going to keep the knees right where they are, but I'm just going to extend the right lower leg and hold that. Now, if that is too challenging, stay with the two legs down. And then from there you hold, feel that other glute, bend that knee. The hips should be the same height still. And then go ahead and roll back down. All right, we're going to try that again, but this time we'll lift the other leg. You're going to breathe in, go through your pelvic tilt, peel off. You're up in your bridge. You keep your knees matching. You're going to extend the left lower leg. And hold that for a second. Bend that. Hips should be the same height. You put that foot back underneath you and roll back down. All right, we'll do each side again. Breathe in. Hold that bridge on up so your glutes are holding and organizing your spine so that you can stabilize there, so you can lift one lower leg out from underneath you. And then bend that knee, put that foot back down. You've got weight on both feet now, and then you roll back down. All the way back down to neutral. Don't stay up in that pelvic tilt. And then breathe in, bridge on up. Up, straight across the front of those hips. Lift that lower leg. Hold those hips steady. Bend that knee. Go ahead, breathe out as you roll back down. All the way back down. Excellent. Now from here, what we will do is we're going to go ahead and bring those knees back up to a tabletop. I'm going to go into an imprint, and then I'm going to go ahead and lift my forehead towards my knees, and then I'm going to go ahead and open on up and bring it back around. Double leg stretch. So breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in. I'm in an imprint. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Make sure to keep your head vertical. Breathe in. Breathe out. And last one. Breathe in. Breathe out. And come on back down. And I want you to stay with the, just relax your lower legs from that tabletop, but keep your knees bent. And now just circle your nose up on the ceiling to get rid of any tension that might have crept into your neck. And then reverse it and go the opposite direction. Now the next thing I'd like you to do is you're in an imprint now. I want you to stay in your imprint and just extend your legs on up towards the ceiling. Now, if you have any lower back issues, I'd like you to take one hand, put it underneath your hip bone. Let's everybody try this. We all are going to protect that lower back. Put the hand underneath and put the other hand underneath the top of the hip bone. And this causes you to have more of a pelvic tilt there. And then I just want you to lower your legs just a little bit. And you're going to feel that you have to really challenge that navel to keep you pinned down like a push pin to that mat. And then bring it back on up. So you're going to lower it, lower it, lower it, lower it. Keep that back imprinted down on the mat. And then bring it back on up. Now, if that pulls too much on your back, you can still move the thighs away with a slightly bent knee. It just shortens the lever, makes less work, but you can still challenge those muscles to do the same activity as when you do it with a straight leg. But it just lightens the load a little bit. All right, so you're going to stay with that imprint and then bring it back on up. All right, now we're going to bend the knees. You can take those hands out from underneath. You're going to touch the ankle and the inside of the knee as you round yourself on up here, and then change to the single leg stretch. You stay in that imprint. Breathe out every time that knee comes in. And what you want to do is make sure that you keep the tension out of your neck by using the front abs here, lacing those front ribs together, keeping that back imprinted, keeping in that scoop. And keep on breathing. Don't want to hold your breath. And then last one, come down and rest. And you can feel how that is starting to now really challenge those abdominal muscles, those core muscles. All right, let's go on over to our tummy now. So we're going to flip on over, and we're going to change our emphasis. And now we're going to work more on that back as you had requested. So what we're going to do here now is put your hands one on top of the other and put your forehead down on top of your hands. You're going to have your elbows wide. Now I don't want to break the microphone, so I'm going to be a little bit higher off than I would normally be if I didn't have a microphone on. But what you're trying to do is make sure that your pelvis is in neutral so you can feel those three bones in alignment there. Your glutes should be tight, your legs are together. Now what I want you to do is just to lift your head and your shoulders off. In other words, your chest off, your front ribs will be down, and just going to hover here and put the weight of your head into your hands. So your shoulder girdle is now responsible for holding that head. And just going to hover, and you're going to feel that that back is working, but it should not feel like you're pressurizing it. And then come down and rest. Can you feel that back working? Excellent. All right, let's try that again. So your toenails are going to stay down on the mat. And you're just going to lift the chest off till the front ribs are still down. Resting would be too strong of a word, but you're going to keep the front ribs laced together, keep the navel pulled up towards the spine, and you're just going to hover and keep on breathing while you're holding this hover. If you feel any discomfort in your back, see if you can lower it just a little bit. You shouldn't feel like it's putting pressure in that lower back, as long as that navel's pulling up towards the ceiling. And then come back down and rest. Now we're going to progress that. You're going to still have your forehead down, but it won't be on your hands because your hands are going to be reaching down towards your knees. And you're going to go ahead and just lift the chest off in this hover here, reaching those fingertips down for your knees, which engages your lats. Then from there, what I want you to do is to go ahead and go up to a T and then pull that back down. Now, if you dropped forward, that meant that your lats disengaged. So come down and rest for just a second. And then you're going to go back on up. And you're going to go up to a T. You don't have to go quite as high if you start to disengage. If you feel like you're going forward, pull those palms back down towards your thigh bones and keep those lats engaged. And then go ahead and you can turn your ear to the side to come back down. And try it one more time, reaching the fingertips down towards the knee first. Keep those lats engaged as you go up to a T. Then if that's easy, you can invert your hands so that your palms are facing towards your head. And then you're going to go ahead and go long over. Now if that's too much or if you fall forward, just bring it back down. And then you're going to go all the way back down to your knees and turn your ear to the other direction to be fair to your neck. All right, going to lift it on up again. I'd like you to try to go up to that T again. Meet your body where it is. If it's doable, go overhead. And then you can lift your toenails off, just energy out the feet. And this would be called Superman. So I liken it to the old Superman TV show, where Superman would be flying through the clouds. Just one long, pretty straight line. And come down and rest, and pull back in child pose. Pull back in child pose. And you can feel how you have been working that back. You might not have felt it as much when you were doing it, but now you can feel as you release it and pull that navel on up and just round on over in child pose. And now let's come on up to all fours. So we're going to go ahead with an all four position here. What I want you to do is to take your right hand and pat your back. All right? So you're going to do a back pat here. So I'm somewhere lower than C7, which is the large vertebrae at the base of the neck, larger than the other ones. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to put the elbow between that open space, opposite direction. And then come back on up. And then look up at the ceiling. So I'm working on rotation of the spine. So I'm going to go between the opening of the arm and the knee on the opposite side. Come back on up and go up towards the ceiling. You're looking up at the ceiling. And go ahead and do that again. And bring it back through and on up. All right, take that hand, put that back down. Now you're going to do it the other direction. So pat your back. And then you're going to go ahead and go in between that opening with the elbow of the arm and leg on the opposite side. You come back on up, and then you're going to look up at the ceiling. All right, and go ahead and go back through. And come back on up and look on up. And again. And last time. And put that hand down. Now what we're going to do is angry cat. You draw that navel on up. Up, 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 up. So you're holding. So it's kind of like you have a hoist here, and it's hoisting your midsection on up towards the ceiling. Now your arms are going to be so light that you could take one arm off the floor, put that back down, try lifting the other, because it is your core that's holding you on up. It's not your arms. They're just helping you balance. And then I'm going to go all the way back down to neutral. So that's the back of the head, spine between the shoulder blades and the tailbone in alignment. And then I can go into cow, which is the tailbone and the back of the head coming slightly closer together. But the navel is still pulling on up towards the spine. Then come back to neutral or flat back. And then you're going to go ahead and go on up to angry cat. Keep this working in your core. Don't push with your arms. Come back to neutral. It's a long position for your spine. And then you're going to go into cow. And do that again. Come back to neutral. Angry cat on up. And come back to neutral. And cow. And neutral. All right, now we're going to just go ahead and thread the needle. We've done this before, so you're going to slide the back of the hand through. You're going to go all the way down to the shoulders. Your hips stay high, and give me that rotation as much as you can. So if you can get back to the back of the shoulder blade, that would be ideal. But go as low as you can. And then you're going to have to use those abs to help draw this back through and back to your all four position. And now you're going to do it with the other side. So you lace this through on the back of the arm, forearm, to the back of the arm, all the way to the back of the shoulder. So you're doing rotation of the spine. Okay, and then pull it back through. Keep those abdominals pulling up towards the spine to help manage that spine. So you can get the mobility from it, and you come back to all fours. Now from there, you're going to lift your right arm, left leg, hold your balance. So we're going to work a little bit on balance here. Nice long line. Bring it back underneath. Then you're going to work the other diagonal, which is left arm, right leg. And pull it back. You're going to go to the other side again. So we're going to work balance and support. So you got to keep that neutral spine. You're looking down at the mat. But your head's engaged with the rest of the spine, and then the other diagonal. And then come on back down. All right, now we're going to go back on to our back, and we're going to do our figure eight. So you're going to go back down in neutral. You're going to lift those legs, and you're going to stay in a neutral position. So you will probably not be at 90. If you can get to 90 and still keep that lower back off, that would be ideal. That just isn't where I can go, though. So I have to meet my body where it's at. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my corkscrew or figure eight up on the ceiling. So I'm going to go to the lower left side, upper left side. I'm going to cut through the center and go to the lower right, upper right. So can you see how it makes the figure eight up on the ceiling with your toes? And this is your corkscrew. So then you're going to be moving the hips. So you're going to go from one side, cross through center, and go to the other side. And so this is for hip mobility. And this makes you use your obliques, your abdominals, and your back muscles to complete this figure eight. Now, you probably went the direction that I told you to, but you might have a favorite way to go. So what we're going to find out is by reversing it, which way your body likes better. So now reverse it. And you will probably find that one way is easier than the other way. to do your corkscrew. But can you feel how it does still work your core muscles? And keep the back of your head down on the mat, shoulder blades down on the mat, but your hips will be moving all over the mat. And you can rest by just folding those legs down. Now I want you to go ahead and put one hand on each shin, and we're going to go ahead and roll back on up. All right, from here then, I want you to go on to the end of your tailbone. And so I'm still in I've gone from my sits bone to my tailbone. I've got a slight pelvic tilt going on here. I'm going to pull my navel back towards my spine, which is going to cause more of a pelvic tilt. And I'm going to roll back and come on back on up to a balance. Roll like a ball. So I'm going to use a little momentum to get that rounding going. And I'm going to control it. I'm going to stop when I need to hold that balance. And then I'm going to roll and come back on up. And good. Roll and hold that balance. And up and round and up. Rolling like a ball should be pretty doable. What I'd like you to do now is go ahead and roll back, hold your balance this time, and then go ahead and straighten your legs and reach for them. And then come back and roll up, straighten the legs, and bend, and roll, straighten your legs, and bend. Now, if rolling like a ball is doable and that's challenging enough, you stay with that. Otherwise, you could go to open leg rocker, which you're going to go a little bit wider than your mat. You're still at the end with that balance. You're going to use that same navel pull back, and then you're going to come on up and hold that balance. So you might have to use the first couple times to just find out where that balance point is. And you can have a little bend. You can hold here if holding at your lower leg is too much and still do the same movement. Or you can hold here. Or you can hold here with a bent knee and do it. So they're all the same movement pattern for the spine. It's just the legs have a different positioning here. And then on the last one, I want you just to hold that. Reach for your toes so you're at the end of your tailbone with the balance. Don't try to overextend your legs. And then fold and go back on your sits bones and you're back to your starting position. All right. Go wide, wider than the mat in your straddle position. Make sure that you still have some working movement on the outside of your hips so that you're not so tight that as soon as you start to move, you feel like your body's tugging at you. And we're going to go ahead here wide, and we're going to move this arm back and this arm forward to do our spine twist. So my rib cage is twisting on top of my set hips. And then I'm going to go back to center and the other direction. And come back to center. And rotate. So I find it helpful to think of the arms as helping with the shoulder blade pushing against, and this chest pulling forward to help me get that rotation. And then the opposite direction. This pushes back, this goes forward to cause the rib cage to rotate even more. And come back to center. And breathe out as you rotate. Breathe in as you come back to center. Breathe out. And breathe in. And do that a couple more times. And you're sitting up now. So you don't want to be leaning back and doing that. You want to sit up as tall as you can when you're doing that. And one more each time, each direction, each side. And come on back. Shake out those legs. All right, now what I'd like you to do, so that was your little intermezzo before we're going to do our basket. So what I want you to do is go ahead, go from your sits bone to the end of your tailbone again, take your legs, relax your lower legs, and all you're going to do is you're going to roll down and fold those legs in. Now, this is called the basket. You've got to go ahead and bring your forehead towards your knees, which are in pretty darn close. My elbows are bent. Now I'm going to go till my arms straighten and I'm over my tailbone. My lower legs will just be dangling. They're uninvolved. But now my abdominals are going to become very involved by pulling that navel down towards the mat. And I can use my bicep, bend my elbows until all of a sudden my pelvis just pops on up and up to a seated position. And then I'm going to go ahead and roll down, fold those legs back in with me. We'll do that again. Forehead towards the knees. Now move the thighs away from you until those arms straighten and your tailbone is down on the mat. So my feet are just hovering over the mat. And then I'm going to use that abdominal strength to pull my shoulders up over my hips. And when that happens, my pelvis just pops on up. All right. Go ahead and give that another try. And so forehead towards the knees. Move the thighs far enough away so I can get that tailbone down on, it's solid down on the mat, so that I can have a balance point here so that when I do get my shoulders up over, those pelvises will just pop on up. Can you feel that in your abs? Excellent. That's what it's there for. That's the purpose of the exercise. Now I want you to go ahead and come back down. You're going to keep those knees folded in, and you're going to lengthen those arms on out to the side. Now what I want you to do is just let those hips and knees go over to the side. You're going to keep your shoulder blades down. So you're straight across your arm from one arm to the other, shoulder blades are down on the mat. And you're going to go as far as those legs will let you go. And then pull back. I shouldn't say it's your legs that let you go, it's your core that lets you go. Now you're going to go the other direction and look away from it. You're going to go all the way on over to the side. And again, you will have a favorite side. Now, if that's a lot of pull on your lower back, you can also do that with your toes staying down on the mat and going until it's not such a pull on that lower back. So you adjust it to what your body's needs are today. But if you can get it up here, then that's a little bit more work, a little bit more toning for those muscles. And you're going to pull the navel back towards the spine to come and get those knees back over your chest, and then go the other direction and come back on up and over. All right, lengthen your legs on down. You're going to start in neutral. So again, neutral is a position where you have your tailbone, shoulder blades, back of the head down. Then you're going to go ahead and you're going to make your right leg as light as a feather. Once you get to that bent knee position, you're going to lift it on up. You're going to go up towards the ceiling by extending that knee. Now I'm going to use the quad to pull it closer to me, and I'm also using the hip flexors to do that. Then from there, I'm going to cross on over. I'm going to feel a pull through the IT band. If you don't feel that pull through the IT band, try internally rotating that leg a little bit. See if that gets that. And then you're going to go down, bring it out to the side, but you're going to keep this other leg from rolling around. And that's your leg circle. So you're going to go over, across, down, bring it back on up. And cross it on over, bring it back on up. So I want these hips to stay even, and just the leg is circling around. Two more. One more. And then you're going to lengthen energy out that big toe, lower that leg down, and you're ready to go on the other side. So bring it on up, light as a feather, hips are even. All right, extend that leg on up towards the ceiling, just straighten that knee, then bring it across your midline. Reach it across, the tailbone stays down. Your pelvis will stay in neutral, the thigh bone will move in the hip socket, and then you're gonna go down, bring it out to the side, just a little bit outside your body line, and bring it down. So it's gonna be controlled by your hips not rolling around, shoulders not rolling. So the core is working on stability, the hip is working on mobility. Remember to breathe. Don't hold your breath. And one more. Energy out the big toe and lower that leg down. And you're back down to your starting position. Good. From there, you're going to go ahead and bring your arms on up towards the ceiling. Drop the shoulder blades back down on the mat. I have my legs touching and my ankles slightly flexed. And what you're going to do here is you're going to round on up to look at your toes, press your lower back against, and come on up in your roll up. All right. Long over the legs, and then go ahead and roll it back down. Do that again. Breathe in, breathe out, roll on up. Keeping the legs long, and then roll it back down. If you're having a little bit of trouble getting on up, you could, as you round on up, touch the outside of your thighs, see if you can just use a little bit of the bicep strength to help get you over that tough spot. And then you can go ahead and roll back down. So you want to see if you can get all that articulation. So you start just like what we started with earlier today, rounding on up, getting the shoulder blades up. You're going to have that same degree, and then you got to push down against the mat with the abdominals to come back on up and go long over those legs. Sits bones stay down, and then roll back down. Last one, breathe in, and now you're going to stay long over your legs, but now go ahead and put your hands down, one in the center, one to your left, and move your right leg out. Then go ahead, put your one hand in the middle, one hand towards the right leg, and move the left leg out. And stay low and you're over in your spine stretch. All right, shake your head yes, shake your head no. Shake your head yes, shake it no. Shake all that tension out of your cervical spine. Now you're going to stay low, and you're going to keep that navel pulling back towards your spine so that you have a patch sewn onto that spine. And then you're going to go over to your right side, and you should have your both shoulders aimed towards that right side. You're going to stay low, go back through center, and then you're going to go over to your left. So now you're working to get both hands to the left side, both shoulders directed over towards that left side, both sits bones stay down. You're going to go back through center. So what we're trying to do here is get the back kinetic chain to lengthen and allow us to go forward, keeping our sitting bones down. So you're back to center. You can hold on to either side, the lower leg or anywhere that you'd like, or you can have your hands in the center. But let your navel work really hard and let your back relax. So from my back waistband to the top of my head should be relaxing over like you threw a quilt over a quilt stand. The quilt isn't doing any work. It's the quilt stand that has to do the work. And in this case, your quilt stand is your navel pulling back towards your spine. Shake your head yes. Shake your head no. And now, as you round on up, you're going to make that space between each and every one of those vertebrae a little bit bigger by rolling on up. Rolling on up. Then once your rib cage gets upright, your shoulder blades are going to go up, back, and down. They slide down on that rib cage, and you're back on up to your upright position. Arms go out to the side, and then you're going to go ahead and do your rotation with forward flexion, which is called saw. And come on up, come back to center. So you rotate, reach for that pinky toe, come on up, come back to center. And rotate, breathe out. Up and center, rotate, breathe on out. Up, center. Keep that movement happening. And each time you're thinking of getting taller. Every time I come back on up, I'm going to really work on lengthening on up. All right? Now what you're going to do is fold one leg in, keep both sitting bones down, and I'm going to go on over to my right. My hand can be down, and I'm going to give my mermaid a try. So what I'm doing is I'm shortening between my rib cage and my hip on my right side as I go this direction. Both sitting bones stay down. Then I'm going to come on up. I'm going to change hands, and I'm going to go over to my left. Both sitting bones stay down. And come back on up. So I'm going to think of lifting on up before I go over to the other side. And both sitting bones stay anchored. Your hips are your anchor, and then you're going to be just going from side to side over that. And come back on up. Now you're going to change which leg is bent. And again, you will find that one side usually is a little bit easier than the other, but we're going to start with going towards the long leg, which in this case is the left, and bring it back on up. And you have this hand. You're not holding yourself up with the hand. You're just using it to help you stretch so that if you get in trouble, it can stop you where you're at and help you get back on up. But you're going to think of lengthening on up each and every time you come through that center. So this side is going to shorten. This side is going to lengthen. I'm at my fullest potential here. And then I'm going to go on over to the side. So I always think of suspenders for some reason when I do this. That when I back up through center, my suspenders have to be even on both sides. All right, good. Shake out your legs before we work them. Now you're going to line yourself on up with some straight line. And I usually use my mat because I'm going to guess my mat is straight. And I'm going to fold this hand just underneath my head. And I cannot see my feet when I look down because my chest is going to be in the way. And what you're going to, if you can see your feet, that means your feet are too far forward and you're going to be working your hip flexor, which already gets enough work. I want it underneath so that you cannot see your feet. So you've got an axle going from one thigh bone to the other. And then you're going to lift that leg on up. And you're going to go ahead and lift up a little bit higher. You're going to feel a little bit of a pinch. That's that femur as deep in the hip socket as it can go. And then I'm going to touch it back down and lift it on up. So these are your hip abductors that you're working right now. And I take and use this hand so that if anything, I'm going to prevent myself from rolling forward. But don't lean back so I can really work those abductors. And stay up there this time. Drop it down just a little bit so I have a little bit of movement so I can make my circle there with that single leg. And again, I might see the toes as they come towards the front of the circle, but make sure you're going back behind yourself slightly. And then reverse it and go the opposite direction. And if you're doing this correctly, you should start to feel this at the head of the femur, right in the hip socket. So I liken this to like stirring a spoon in a cup of coffee. You don't move the cup, you move the spoon. And you move it as it's at the bottom of the cup. So up here in the hip socket. Good. Can you feel that? Excellent. Now what I'd like to do is stay here, but bend your knee. And now you're going to go down with internal rotation and then out to external rotation. Down to internal rotation, external. So that, notice that knee still stays in front. It's not all the way up towards the ceiling. In and out. In and out. And in and out. Can you feel that in that hip socket? Oh, we'll keep on doing it until you feel it. Yeah, there you go. And this is what does do internal and external rotation. Your knee does not, unless it's in a non-planted position, and your ankle does not, unless it's in a non-planted position. But the hip does. All right, good. And you can go ahead and lengthen that on out. And we're ready to go the other side. So go ahead, put that arm underneath, make yourself somewhat comfortable, and then you're going to go ahead and lift that leg on up. So again, make sure that you can't see your feet underneath you. You don't want to feel like you're arching your back. You are in neutral spine inside lying. And so your knee is facing forward, and so are all 5 toenails. Lift it on up, and you should feel a slight pinch, and that's telling you that your femur is as deep in that hip socket as it can go, and that's your abduction. And up, and last time on up. You're going to stay on up there, you're going to drop it down just a little bit, and you'll draw your circles. So I want to get that movement happening at that hip socket. And then go ahead and reverse it. Now, while you're moving this leg, guess what the other leg is doing? It's helping stabilize that pelvis so that you're not rocking around. So you are working the other side. So this side has already worked as it was stabilizing too. So it might feel like you get a little more fatigued on this side. All right, now you're going to bend that knee. And then you're going to go ahead and do internal and external. So is my pelvis moving? The answer would be no. It is my thigh crosses on over and then comes back on out. So I'm doing internal and external at the hip socket. So it's not my spine moving, it's not my hip girdle moving, it is the femur in the hip socket. And you should be able to feel that right on the outside of the hip, and you might feel it in the inner thigh. And last one. And up. Good. Lengthen that leg. All right. Now what we're going to do is go on to our back, bend our knees, roll on up. And then what I want you to do is to lengthen your heels away from you a little bit more than you normally do. Take your hands, have them pointed off the fingertips off the side of the mat. Pull the shoulder blades towards the center of your spine so that I'm opening on up my chest, and then lift up to a tabletop. You're going to lift those glutes on up towards the ceiling, and you're going to feel that You are sharing the responsibility of holding yourself on up with the glutes and the shoulder girdle. So the hip girdle and shoulder girdle. And then come back and fold back down. Can you feel that shared responsibility? Okay, so do that again. So I'm going to pull my knees up over my feet, slide the shoulder blades towards the center of the spine, and open on up towards the ceiling. The tabletop. So everything that's out of sight, out of mind is now shortening in that rear aspect. And come on back down. And you guys can be done for today. Excellent. Good work, you guys.